Hi, I'm Elise. Last night at my sister's engagement party, she raised her glass, looked me dead in the eyes, and said, "I'm just glad I'm not pathetic and single like her." The room erupted in laughter. Then my father added, "She's the reason this family is ashamed." I didn't say a word. I just stood there, frozen. But then, her fiancé took the mic, and what he said next made every glass stop midair. My sister's secret wasn't safe anymore. Now they're all begging me to stay silent. Too late. They always said I was just different, not rebellious, not dramatic, just a little too quiet, too opinionated in the wrong moments, too soft when they needed someone who sparkled. At least that's how my mother used to put it. "You're not like your sister, Elise. She knows how to light up a room." What she meant was, I didn't fit the frame. I was the shadow that made their perfect family portrait feel a little off center. Growing up next to Sienna was like standing beside a bonfire, bright, loud, and impossible to ignore. She was homecoming queen, student body president, the girl who could cry in front of our dad and walk away with concert tickets. I was the girl who wrote her college essays, helped her pass pre-calc, and once sat in the principal's office for something she did because it would look better if I took the hit. I wasn't the golden child. I was the sponge, the one who absorbed the blame so the rest of them could shine. When she got engaged, I was happy for her, not in a let's throw confetti kind of way, but in a maybe this will give her a new focus kind of way. Maybe now she wouldn't need to compete with a version of me she'd already decided was beneath her. I wasn't even sure if I should go to the party. The invitation came in a gold envelope that felt too expensive to open. My name was printed wrong. Elisa, not Elise. An honest mistake, maybe. Or maybe just another reminder that I'd become a placeholder, even in print. I sat on my couch for almost an hour with the RSVP card in my hand, flipping it back and forth like it might say something new if I stared hard enough. My friend Mallory told me to skip it. She said, "Don't go where you're tolerated. Go where you're celebrated." But the thing about growing up invisible is you keep showing up, hoping someone might finally see you. So I went. The venue was one of those rooftop spaces with string lights and raw brick and Instagram walls plastered with fake roses. Everyone looked perfect. Teeth too white, dresses too tight, laughter a little too loud. Sienna made her grand entrance in a champagne-colored gown, surrounded by friends who wore matching blush tones like backup dancers. She didn't even look at me. Not once. I stood near the bar, nursing a drink I didn't want, wondering if it would have made a difference if I'd stayed home. Dad walked past me twice and didn't say hello. Mom gave me a tight-lipped smile, the kind you save for coworkers you barely like. No one asked how I was. No one asked what I'd been up to. And I didn't offer. I used to try. I'd bring cupcakes to family gatherings, share work news at the dinner table, offer to help plan birthdays. But eventually, you stop volunteering pieces of yourself to people who keep dropping them. Instead, I watched from the sidelines, as always, while Sienna floated around like she was born for this moment. And in a way, she was. All those years rehearsing her charm on teachers and boyfriends and relatives had led up to this. The center of attention with a ring on her finger and no one to challenge her throne. Until that toast. Until she turned toward me, glass raised, voice too sweet to trust. "I'm just glad I'm not pathetic and single like her." At first, I wasn't even sure I'd heard her right. The words hung there like fog, too absurd to be real, too sharp to ignore. Then the laughter started. Not the whole room, just enough people to make it sting. And then my dad, my own father, chuckled and added, "She's the reason this family is ashamed." It didn't matter that he was half drunk or trying to be funny. It mattered that he said it, out loud, in public, like it was some long-held truth finally set free. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I felt my heart beat slow in a way that scared me. Like I just stepped out of my own body. My glass stayed full. My lips stayed shut. The room was suddenly too loud, too bright, and too familiar. Because I'd been here before. Maybe not at a rooftop bar, maybe not in heels and lipstick. But emotionally, this moment had happened 1,000 times. Different words, same sting, same smirk from Sienna, same silence from my parents, same ache in my throat that I swallowed down because crying would only prove them right. But just as I started to turn away, to disappear into the edge of the room where forgotten things go, I heard another voice. Clear, calm, a little shaky but deliberate. It was Daniel, Sienna's fiancé, holding the mic. And what he said next didn't just stop the party, it shattered it. There's a moment just before glass shatters, a silence that cuts deeper than the sound that follows. That was the room when Daniel took the mic. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't make a scene. He just looked at Sienna for a long, long moment. Long enough that even the tipsy uncle at the buffet stopped chewing. Long enough that my mother's painted smile started to flicker. And then he said, I wasn't going to speak tonight, but since this is a celebration of honesty, he turned to the crowd. I think it's time we stop pretending. You could feel the shift instantly. Sienna laughed nervously. Oh my God, Daniel, not now. But he wasn't joking. I know most of you see this perfect couple, this perfect family, he said, gesturing toward Sienna's parents. But perfection has a cost, doesn't it? My stomach twisted. I didn't know what he was about to say, but I knew the look in his eyes. It was the same look I'd seen in the mirror too many times to count. Exhaustion, clarity, the quiet kind of rage. Sienna's smile was frozen now, panic rising behind her lashes. Daniel, stop, but he didn't. She says she's glad she's not single like her sister. But what she doesn't say is that Elise is the only reason we're still standing here. The room tensed like it was holding its breath. She doesn't say, Elise covered for her the night she got that DUI, used her own ID to get her out of trouble before the media could find out. She doesn't say, Elise paid her rent for 6 months in college so her credit wouldn't be destroyed. She doesn't say Elise was the one who stayed with her the night she had a breakdown and begged me not to tell anyone. Now people were shifting uncomfortably in their chairs. My mother stood halfway up like she could will him silent by posture alone. My dad folded his arms, face like stone, but I saw the twitch in his jaw. Daniel kept going. She says Elise is pathetic, but Elise is the only one in this room who has never lied to me, never manipulated me, never asked me to pretend. That's when Sienna snapped. Daniel, what the hell is this? You're drunk. He shook his head, slowly. I'm just done being part of the performance. He turned to me then, just for a moment, not asking permission, just acknowledging something no one else ever had. Elise, I should have spoken up sooner. The weight of those words hit harder than anything my sister had said, because I believed him. And still, I said nothing. The damage was already done. Sienna stormed off the stage, heels clacking like gunshots across the floor. Her bridesmaids exchanged panicked glances and scattered like startled birds. My mother chased after her. My father stayed put, staring straight ahead as if all this would vanish if he just didn't look. And I just stood there. People began whispering, looking my way for the first time all night, but not with pity, with curiosity. Who was I really? The quiet one, the single one, the invisible one. Now, suddenly visible, I wanted to leave. Every part of me screamed to flee, but my legs didn't move, because for once the shame wasn't mine. And still the silence around me buzzed with 100 unsaid things. The years of mockery, the holidays spent as the butt of family jokes, the dinners where I was interrupted, ignored, edited out of stories I'd helped build. It all poured back into me, thick and suffocating. Someone finally approached me. Aunt Jean, I think. She touched my arm like I was a wounded animal. Elise, dear, why didn't you ever tell us? I looked at her. Tell them what? That being erased doesn't always come with bruises. That it's not one big betrayal, but thousands of small ones that teach you to sit still, smile politely, and disappear before dessert? I didn't answer, because even now, even with the secret out, I knew they weren't asking to understand. They were asking to absolve themselves of complicity. I stepped out onto the balcony, away from the tension, the music, the questions. The night air hit me hard, cool and sharp like it was trying to wake me up. And it did, because even though I hadn't spoken a word all evening, I had been heard, and I wasn't sure if I could ever go back to silence again. I didn't walk out of the party. I peeled myself away from it, layer by layer, like shedding a second skin that never fit in the first place. No one stopped me, not even to pretend. No calls from the crowd, no hands reaching out to check if I was okay. That's what got me most. Not the toast, not my father's dig, not even Sienna's dripping disdain. What gutted me, what really drove the knife in, was how normal it all was to them. Because I'd been walking out of rooms like that my entire life. Rooms where my voice didn't carry. Rooms where I was always too much or not enough. Too serious, too sarcastic, too single, too independent, too Elise. The elevator was slow, so I took the stairs. I remember gripping the banister harder than necessary, my heels echoing down the stairwell like applause after a performance I never agreed to star in. My chest felt tight, not like panic, not like sadness, but like all the oxygen in me had been used up pretending I was fine. The thing is, I knew Sienna would humiliate me. I even prepared for it, wore a dress I wouldn't regret being photographed in, practiced fake smiling in the mirror, promised myself I wouldn't rise to the bait, but what I didn't expect was Daniel. Daniel, the golden fiancé, the perfectly symmetrical white-teethed future husband. Daniel, who noticed what no one else ever did. And suddenly everything cracked. By the time I hit the sidewalk, my phone was already buzzing, a missed call from my mother, a text from my aunt that read, "It wasn't as bad as it seemed, sweetie. Come back inside." I turned the phone off. I didn't want apologies, especially not the soft, backhanded kind that came wrapped in excuses. What I wanted was clarity. So I walked. No direction, no rideshare app open, just heels on pavement and the night wrapping itself around me like a question I didn't know how to answer. And that's when the memories started crowding in. Not loud ones, not dramatic ones, just the quiet kind, the erasures, like when I brought home a certificate from my college for academic excellence, and my mom smiled and said, "Maybe now you'll find a nice guy." Or the time I got a job offer in another state and Sienna joked, "Wow, someone's actually hiring you?" Or when I bought my own car, used, scratched, but mine, and Dad said, "Let's hope it doesn't break down on you like everything else you try." Little cuts, so small they almost don't bleed, but over time they hollow you out. I passed a closed bakery. The sign read, "Come back tomorrow." We're rebuilding something sweet. I stopped and stared at it for a while. Maybe it was cheesy, maybe it was a sign, but something in me cracked open right there on that sidewalk. Not pain. No, I was past pain. It was rage. Not the kind that burns buildings, the kind that builds boundaries. I sat on a bus bench 2 blocks down and pulled off my shoes. My feet ached, my back ached, but more than that, my soul ached from years of shrinking to fit inside their narrative. For so long, I convinced myself that I was the problem, that if I just acted right, smiled more, stayed quiet, they'd finally invite me to the table. But now the truth was clear. They didn't want me at the table. They just wanted to use my silence to make their noise sound better. And what hurt most? I let them. I let them shape me into something unthreatening, unnoticeable, forgettable, because it was easier than standing alone. But standing alone suddenly didn't seem so scary anymore. I pulled out my phone, not to scroll, not to distract, but to go into my notes app. I wrote, "They only cheer when I stay small. So I'm done shrinking." It wasn't poetry, but it was honest. And honesty had always been the part of me they hated most. Then, like a slow-moving wave, another thought crept in. That secret Sienna buried years ago. The one no one knew I knew. The one I protected her from. The one she never thanked me for. The one that, if spoken out loud, could level the entire illusion she'd spent her life building. I had carried it for too long. I had bled silence for too long. But now? Now it felt like fire in my throat. And for once I didn't want to swallow it. The memory was always there. Lurking, like a film reel just waiting for me to press play. And that night, on the edge of a bus bench with my heels in my lap and blistered feet on the concrete, I let it run. It was 4 years ago. Sienna had just graduated, barely. She'd scraped her way through with a diploma and a $1,000 smile, which she wore like it made her untouchable. She was living in a trendy apartment she couldn't afford, posting brunch photos like they came with health insurance, and flirting her way into brand deals that never stuck. It was all curated chaos. Until the night everything almost came undone. It started with a call at 2:47 a.m. My phone lit up. Sienna, I stared at it. She never called me unless she needed something. I answered. Hello? There was silence except for heavy breathing then. Elise, I need you. Her voice was slurred but not drunk. She sounded terrified. Where are you? I asked, already grabbing my keys. A hospital. Not the one downtown, the one out by the freeway. She'd driven herself into a concrete divider, told the nurses she hit black ice in July. When I got there, she was curled up in the ER bed, mascara streaked down her cheeks, clutching her phone like it was the only thing keeping her alive. The doctor said she was lucky, but he looked me in the eye when he added, "We need to talk privately." That's when I found out she was pregnant, 6 weeks, and she didn't know who the father was. The doctor handed me a discharge form and said they couldn't legally keep her unless she wanted to stay. She didn't. Of course she didn't. So I drove her home, sat her on the couch, and watched her fall apart. She cried, not for the baby, not for herself. She cried because her image was cracking, because someone might find out. Elise, she whispered, gripping my hand so tight it went numb. Please, please don't tell Mom and Dad. I wasn't going to. She wiped her face and nodded. You're good at secrets. I should have been disgusted, but instead I just felt numb, because she was right. I was good at secrets. I was the one who covered for her when she cheated on her SATs. I was the one who took the fall when she stole our mother's credit card in high school. And I was the one who picked her up from that clinic 2 weeks later, no questions asked. We never talked about it again. Not when she moved in with Daniel. Not when she posted number clean living selfies with green juice and yoga mats. Not when she told our family she was saving herself for marriage, like it was some badge of honor. I watched her reinvent herself with the audacity only the protected have. And I let her, because I thought, maybe this was the moment. Maybe she'd finally stop needing to tear me down. Maybe now she'd owe me something more than silence. But Sienna never paid debts. She erased them. That's what hit me the hardest after the party, realizing she still thought I was disposable, still believed I was nothing more than her emotional garbage disposal, the one who took in all the rot and never made a sound. She looked me in the eye at her engagement party, raised her glass, and called me pathetic, knowing what I'd carried for her, knowing what I could say. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was keeping a secret. I felt like I was holding evidence, not just of what she did, but of who she was. And maybe it was time the rest of them saw that too. I pulled out my phone, not to post, not to gossip. I opened the locked folder in my notes app, one I hadn't touched in years. Inside were screenshots, the text messages she sent me after the hospital, the one that said, "Just delete this." It never happened. The rideshare receipts, the pharmacy slip, even a blurry picture I'd taken. Her in that ER bed, hand over her eyes, face turned away, but unmistakably her. I didn't know why I saved it all. Back then I told myself it was for protection, but maybe deep down, I always knew this day would come, when silence wouldn't protect me anymore. I exhaled, slow, sharp, final. And then another thought hit me, harder than anything else. Daniel doesn't know. He knows part of it, but not that part. The pregnancy, the clinic, the lies she told him about being pure and traditional, and whatever else she wrapped around herself like armor. And if he ever finds out, really finds out, it won't be because I told him. It will be because Sienna finally pushed the wrong person too far. Because when you build your empire on erasure, all it takes is one cracked voice to bring the whole thing down. And for the first time in my life, I didn't want to whisper anymore. The thing about secrets is, they rot. They don't stay buried, they fester. And the more perfect the picture, the quicker the decay spreads beneath it. I didn't know how much Daniel already knew. I only knew this. He wasn't just trying to make a point when he grabbed the mic at that party. He was pulling the first thread in a very expensive, very carefully stitched illusion. And by the time the thread unraveled, it wouldn't just be Sienna's dress that came undone. I wasn't there when the full eruption happened. By then, I'd left the venue, but Daniel, he wasn't done speaking. Later, a friend who stayed behind told me what happened after Sienna stormed off. The room froze. Yes, but then the murmuring began. And Daniel didn't chase after her. He stayed. He stood in the center of the ballroom, surrounded by shocked relatives, clinking glasses, and floral centerpieces worth more than my rent. And he told the truth. Not just mine. His. "I've been quiet about a lot of things," he began, "because I loved her, and when you love someone, you try to protect the parts they can't face in themselves." He paused. A few people stood up. Most stayed seated. All listened. I knew Sienna had demons. I thought we all did. But there's a difference between being flawed and being cruel. The word landed hard. Cruel. Not troubled. Not emotional. Not misunderstood. Cruel. He pulled a folded paper from his inside jacket pocket. A printout. The text messages. "She begged her sister to erase this," Daniel said. And Elise did. She erased herself. For her. For years, he read a few lines out loud. Not enough to humiliate, just enough to devastate. "I'm scared I'll be a terrible mom. Just pretend this never happened. Daniel thinks I've only been with him. Don't ruin that." Silence. More silence. Then Daniel looked up and said, "I deserve to know who I'm marrying." And it wasn't just the words, it was the timing, the engagement party, their families present, photos being taken, vows rehearsed in jest. And in the middle of all that curated perfection, he struck the match. "She's not who you think she is," he continued, voice firm but controlled. "And I'm done pretending for her, because Elise stopped pretending tonight, and I saw what real strength looks like." That part I wasn't ready for. He didn't just expose Sienna, he lifted me. He didn't need to say my name again, because the silence that followed, that was my name. He set the mic down, walked straight out, didn't wait for applause or questions, he just left. By the time he reached the parking lot, my mother had collapsed into a chair. My dad was red-faced, shouting something about family loyalty. And Sienna, well, she was nowhere to be found. The engagement was over before the cake had been cut. I found out all this not through gossip, not through group chats. Daniel texted me, "I hope I didn't cross a line. I just couldn't sit there and let them treat you like that. You deserved better, always did." I stared at that message for a long time, not because it was dramatic, but because it was the first time anyone in that circle had ever acknowledged the years I spent swallowing my own voice to keep theirs intact. I didn't reply right away. I didn't know how. What do you say to someone who just cracked open your entire life on your behalf? The irony? Daniel and I had never been close. He was always kind, always polite, but distant. He fit in too well with the version of Sienna that the world loved. I assumed he couldn't see through it. I was wrong. He had seen everything, maybe not clearly at first, but enough to notice the gaps, the way her stories changed, the way she recoiled at accountability, the way she always pointed the finger at me. He told me in a second message, "I started noticing how every fight we had came back to you. Your name was always at the center of her excuses." That hit harder than the rest, because I knew that pattern. If Sienna was upset, I was the cause. If she failed, I distracted her. If something went wrong, I must have poisoned the air with my presence. I was her built-in scapegoat, and no one ever questioned it. Until now. And now. The collapse had begun. By the end of that week, her bridal photos were pulled from social media. The vendor posts stopped tagging her. A few distant cousins reached out to me, not to apologize, but to check the temperature. They wanted to know if it was as bad as it seemed. Translation: can we still align with her, or is she radioactive now? I gave them nothing because I didn't need to explain anymore. Daniel had done that for me. The headlines didn't come. No big scandal, no viral threads, but something worse happened for Sienna. Silence, the kind that follows you through rooms, the kind that buzzes just below every conversation, the kind that lets you know you're not forgotten, you're watched. And as for me, I wasn't celebrating, I wasn't triumphant, I was finally standing on level ground, and that was enough. For now. It didn't take long for the whispers to start. The party ended in awkward waves and unanswered questions. The photos stopped. The live streams were cut mid-toast. No one posted the video of Daniel's mic drop, not yet. But phones had been out. People had recorded. That's how this always works. You can try to curate your life, control your angles, filter your flaws. But when something real crashes through, it spreads faster than you can blink. 3 days after the engagement party, Sienna's name popped up in a Facebook mom group thread. Is this the same girl from that rooftop event? The one whose fiancé called off the wedding in front of everyone? The comments poured in. Yup, I was there. It was wild. Apparently, she lied about being some empowerment influencer or whatever. OMG, someone said her sister saved her from a whole DUI years ago? And just like that, the facade cracked open, again. Her engagement photos, the ones that used to rack up thousands of likes, were suddenly flooded with new comments. You're not even who you pretend to be. Imagine humiliating your own sister and still thinking you're the victim. This is what happens when truth catches up. She tried damage control. Of course she did. She posted a soft-lit selfie with a caption that read like a therapy worksheet. Sometimes growth comes from being misunderstood. Grateful for the ones who've stayed through the noise. But the internet wasn't buying it. An anonymous account dropped screenshots of her messages, the ones she'd sent me after the hospital visit begging for secrecy, the ones where she lied to Daniel, and though I hadn't leaked them, I didn't deny them either, because enough was enough. I wasn't going to clean up her mess again. I wasn't going to plug the leak on a sinking ship. Let it sink. What surprised me most wasn't how fast people turned on her. It was how quiet my family was. No calls, no texts, not from my father, who once barked that I was the reason our family was ashamed. Not from my mother, who'd hovered over Sienna like a fragile porcelain doll all our lives. Not even from the cousins who used to laugh when Sienna made jokes at my expense. Nothing. It was like I'd been scrubbed out completely. Again. Only this time it didn't hurt. It felt clean. Because the truth was, they weren't defending her because they believed her. They were defending the version of the family they needed to maintain. And now that the scaffolding had collapsed, they didn't know who to blame. So they went silent. Daniel, on the other hand, kept checking in, not to pry, not to stir drama, just brief, respectful messages. You holding up? Saw what she posted. Just know I don't regret speaking up. If you ever want to talk, no pressure. I didn't reply to most of them. I wasn't sure what to say. But one night, I finally wrote back. Thank you for seeing what no one else ever did. He responded almost instantly. It's not just that I saw, it's that you never asked anyone to. That stuck with me, because he was right. I spent so much of my life trying to prove I was worthy of kindness, of protection, of being believed, without ever asking for it. I didn't know how. But now I didn't need to beg, because the receipts were everywhere. Sienna's followers dropped. Brand deals paused. Her name became a warning, not a brag. And me? I got emails, dozens, from people who had seen the threads and found their way to my tutoring site. Parents, students, even strangers. One read, I just want to say thank you for existing. Watching someone handle years of erasure with such quiet dignity, it gave me the courage to stop apologizing for being too much or not enough. I see you, and I see myself in you. That one, I printed. I pinned it above my desk, next to a photo of me at age 7. Gap-toothed, crooked bangs, too shy to speak unless spoken to. I looked at that child and whispered, You made it. Not everyone celebrated with me. My mom finally broke the silence. A short voicemail. Elise, I hope you're happy. You've humiliated your sister. Are you proud of that? I played it twice just to let it sink in. Still no apology, still no acknowledgement. Just the same emotional blackmail in a new disguise. And this time, I didn't even feel angry. I just deleted it. Because this wasn't about revenge. This was about release. I wasn't trying to ruin Sienna. I was just done shrinking to make her look bigger. By the end of that week, the world had moved on. The threads faded, the comments slowed, but something had shifted. Permanently. I was no longer the single sister. No longer the weird one. No longer the invisible one who stayed quiet while the house burned down. I was a woman who'd survived 1,000 small erasures, and finally stepped into the frame. Not for them, not for validation, but because truth doesn't need an audience to matter. There's a difference between walking away and being free. I used to think they were the same, that if I left the room, stayed silent, avoided the phone calls, somehow that would count as freedom. But I've learned the truth. Freedom isn't the absence of noise, it's the presence of peace. And peace for me didn't come all at once. It started quietly, with small choices: blocking my mother's number, removing myself from the family group chat, unfollowing Sienna after her fourth healing post with a fake smile and filtered tears. Each action was like cutting a thread from the rope they used to tie me down. They didn't even notice at first, and maybe that's what finally set me free. Because for the first time, I stopped hoping they'd come after me, stopped hoping they'd chase me with apologies or regrets, stopped hoping they'd suddenly wake up and say, "We were wrong, we see you now." They didn't, and they won't, and that's okay. Not everything broken needs to be repaired. Some things need to stay broken so you can see them clearly. Sienna tried one last time. 2 weeks after the fallout, I got a package. No return address, but the handwriting on the front was unmistakable. Hers. Inside was a letter, a handwritten note on pale pink stationery. "Elise, I know things got out of hand. I don't blame you for what Daniel did, but I wish you hadn't made things worse by letting people dig into the past. You've always been strong. You just didn't know how to use it in the right way. Maybe one day we can talk. Start fresh. Like sisters should." I read it once, and then again, more slowly. Not once did she say, "I'm sorry." Not once did she admit what she did. She just shifted the blame to me for not protecting the image she spent her life building on top of my silence. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer, not out of sentiment, but as a record, a reminder. Then I sat down and wrote my own letter. But I didn't send it to her. I wrote it for myself. "Elise, you don't owe them reconciliation. You don't owe them silence. You don't owe anyone the parts of yourself they spent years ignoring. You gave love, you gave patience, you gave protection, and they fed you shame in return. Let go of the hope that they'll ever become the people you deserved. You are not broken because they couldn't see your worth. You are free because you finally do." I signed it, sealed it, and tucked it behind the photo of me as a child. And that night, I slept like I hadn't in years. In the months that followed, things got quieter. The noise of the scandal faded. The texts stopped. Even the guilt inside me, the one that always asked, "What if you just stayed quiet a little longer?" finally hushed. I moved into a new apartment, nothing fancy, but mine. A small balcony with room for a chair and a potted plant. Bookshelves full of stories I loved instead of rules I followed. And most importantly, a desk. That desk became my sanctuary, not for work, for truth. I began journaling every morning, not pages of grief or bitterness, just pieces of myself that had been missing. Stories, memories, ideas. Sometimes I wrote letters to the girl I used to be. Sometimes I wrote messages I hoped someone out there might need. I started posting them, just short captions, no name attached, no drama. And slowly, people began to respond. Strangers, sisters, women who had been shamed for saying too much or not enough. One message read, "I never had the words for it until now. Thank you. You said what I've always felt and never had the courage to admit." I cried when I read that one, not because it hurt, because it didn't, because I wasn't alone anymore. I wasn't someone's side character. I wasn't someone's emotional punching bag. I wasn't pathetic or the reason this family is ashamed. I was Elise, whole, scarred, but not broken. The best part? I never needed to take anyone down to get here. I didn't ruin Sienna's life. I didn't destroy my parents. I just finally stopped handing them the pen and letting them write my story. And maybe they'll never understand what that cost me. Maybe they'll always think I'm bitter. Maybe I'll always be the problem in their version of events, but I'm not living in their version anymore. I'm not sitting in the shadows, waiting for permission to be proud. I'm not apologizing for being too much. I'm not hiding the truth because it makes people uncomfortable. Because the truth is mine. And peace doesn't need permission. It just needs space. And now I finally have it. I didn't speak to destroy them. I spoke to reclaim myself. And sometimes, survival isn't loud, it's simply choosing to never disappear again.